Hey guys, what you're about to hear is our character creation episode, which we recorded back in March of this year, but then we realized that we talked about a lot of stuff that we'd rather reveal more slowly over time, so we put it in the vault for a while until we had things a little more fleshed out. And since this Monday is like a fairly major holiday, it seemed like a good time to finally drop it. And don't worry, we'll have our next regular episode next week instead of in 2 weeks, so you won't have to wait that long to get back to our regular weirdness. But before we get into things, I just want to take a moment to say how great it's been to be able to make this show over the past year and to share it with all of you. 2017 has been kind of a rough year for everyone, and being able to reconnect with this wonderful group of people and tell our weird stories and see how much people enjoy them has meant so much to me and I think to all of us. So thanks to all of you for making this project possible. We've got a lot of stuff coming up in the new year that we're really excited about, including new stories and some short side games and some really wonderful guests. So rather than drag this out any longer, I'm just going to hand it off to also me.
Welcome to Chimera episode... Nope, that's not even correct. That's not even the right title.
All of that.
Let's try that again.
Welcome to the Chimera, episode 0. If you're listening, this is the first thing that we have recorded, but probably not the first thing we're releasing. So if time sounds weird when you listen to this, it's because it's out of order. We're going to do our character creation stuff in some early scene setting, I guess you would say. So, yeah, I'm Finn LeBate. I am the first person talking. Probably Josh should talk next.
Yeah, I'm Josh Hall-Bachner. I will be serving as the storyteller or story guide or story pather or whatever you want to call it for this particular set of play. I am either the number 2 or number 3 most frequent GM from our college group here by volume of sessions run. I don't know.
That sounds correct.
Mm-hmm.
And,
if we count Exalted, then you're clearly number 2, and possibly even number 1. So,
that's me.
Alphabetical order. Jeff.
Hi. Wouldn't Brayden be next then?
Not if you're going by last name.
Oh, well, fine. Hi, my name is Jeffrey Bard. I am a player and a GM at times, but
Yes,
I've never GM'd for these guys. I don't know what else to say about myself, because I don't have much of a media presence, but I can't wait to do this.
You're the namesake of the Jeff Bard rule for missing sessions. So
wait, what is that rule? Do I know that rule?
Yeah,
probably not. You
yeah, I don't think, guys. I don't think our audience knows that rule. So,
if you miss one game, you do something stupid.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
If you miss 2 games, you lose some fingers. If you miss 3 games, you go evil.
I see. Okay, that explains so much.
Yeah, I think Jeff is the only person who actually made it through all 3 steps of that chat in the course of our
Thus setting the precedent.
Yeah.
Kelly, why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Kelly Weissman Asperuth Jackson. I am a player in this game. I was the sort of primary GM, ST, whatever derivative you want to use, for the game that we all played in college, which is how a lot of our social bonds got formed in the first place. I have a social media presence and online presence, but it's for my ministry as Unitarian Universalist minister. So if you're interested in that, sure, look me up. But you're not going to find a lot of really exciting gaming stuff there, probably.
Kelly is the only one in this group who is actually paid to talk professionally. So
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Kacey, you're next.
Okay, I'm Kacey Smith. I'm another player in this game. I also participated in the games that we played in college. Also as a player, I haven't done much storytelling. And as you can probably tell, I have lost my voice somewhat. So I won't have sounded like this before, and hopefully will never sound like this again.
Yay!
Brandon.
BDL.
Braden.
Yeah, and similarly, Braden is the only actually internet famous person that we have in this group.
Yeah.
For now.
Yeah.
For now.
My name is Braden. I'm a player in this. I make comics. Me and my wife and art partner Shelly made the Adventure
Hi,
Time
Shelley.
comics. She's in the other room watching hockey. What else? Oh, I also do some voices on a couple other podcasts. Greater Boston. I'm Leon Stamatis, who dies in the first episode and keeps appearing throughout the rest of the show.
Oh yeah, we'll have to get a standard plug text in place for that so that we can tell everybody to listen.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, I think that's
Yay.
everybody. So
Yes.
yeah, let's dive in. So to just kind of preface everything here a little bit, we considered a few options for how to actually play here, and then we decided to do the most difficult and fidgety thing possible, which is to try to run this with a system that is not actually fully published and finalized yet. So we're kind of using a kit-bashed version of the story path system that is going to, in the future, serve as the basis for Onyx Path's new editions of Scion, as well as the Trinity Continuum games. So we have a kind of custom character sheet that I threw together for this, and we're going to just kind of go through some of the process of actually statting out the characters right now and see how that goes.
Do we want to give a slate over? Well, I guess since people will have already heard some of this, they'll already kind of know, but do we want to give a slate overview of the game premise?
That's
Yeah,
probably
sure.
a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
So for this purpose, we have a campaign whose I think exact name is still TBD based on our last conversation.
Yeah.
But the goal is to have something sort of in the Guardians of the Galaxy universe, where we have a ship of kind of random aliens and a single human, all with kind of a super heroic bent, flying around on a ship and getting into trouble.
That is in the thematic universe, not in the literal universe.
Yes. Please don't
That's
sue
right. Don't
us.
sue us, Marvel.
Cool.
We are the protectors of a large stellar expanse.
Well,
Well, protectors remains to be seen.
Yeah.
we are
We are the something.
we are the
today.
explorers of a large stellar expanse.
We are in a large stellar
Yeah.
expanse.
Everything is in scare quotes.
Yeah.
Okay, so honestly, I think the thing to do here is kind of just go down the sheet from top to bottom, and we can each kind of go over what we're trying to do there. Or I guess actually we want to follow the instructions that I wrote. Don't we?
Oh,
I actually wrote
Probably
this
do.
up.
Oh yeah.
It's in,
Went to
it's in
the
the channel. So
trouble
let's
of
do that.
Right.
Character creation.
It's weird. I feel like I need multiple screens to make this character now.
yeah.
No, you don't, because
I-
whenever you do something else, Skype pops up in front of it.
That's true.
Yeah.
I'm just going to
Sure.
use y'all as my multiple screens.
Mm-hmm.
Fancy
Okay,
people.
so first off, just filling out the details at the top. So if everybody could just kind of go through this quickly so that I can go back and listen to how everyone pronounces their names next time I need to remember. So, let's just start with you, Jeff.
My character's name is Rolith.
What else do we have on the sheet there?
We have campaign, species, nature, and affiliation.
I don't even know why I put nature on there.
Yeah,
Somebody
I was
asked me
kind of
and I didn't have a
surprised you
good
did.
answer.
Tradition. That's all
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, we can gain the non-existent willpower by living up to it, I guess.
It's in every game, and it's meaningless in every game.
Yep.
So
And remind me,
are we striking nature? Or are we
think we're
just
just
going to make
ignoring
something
it.
up?
just put whatever you want. And so remind me how your species is pronounced, Jeff?
The Ulmast.
Okey-doke. All right. How about you, Braden?
My character's name is Dang. He is a Ruiban.
Did we lose you? Are you gone?
No,
You froze for a second there.
Am I here?
Yeah, you're
Okay.
here.
Yeah, you're here. I
All right.
overreacted.
Yeah, sorry. Paying a whole lot for this internet that is not very good. My character's name is Dang. He is from the planet Ruibos 4. So he's a Ruiban.
Ruiban. Okay. Kelly?
My character's name is Theron Melanthios, which, interestingly enough, the direct translation is Hunter Blackflower. He is an Aileros, the plural is Aileroi, from the planet Rhea.
Casey?
I'm playing Molly Harrow, who is a human, so that's all pretty easy to pronounce. I have an affiliation question. What is that? Just like the Chimera, or what? What is
that's
the
what I wrote.
affiliation? Okay,
For us, yeah, it's just going to be the Chimera.
cool.
And Vin.
I am playing Sidra, who is more or less a native of the planet Ardor, and of the native species Ardori.
And also
more
a
or
magical
less.
money robot.
Yeah, and also kind of a clone AI pile of cash.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the first really significant thing that we have to work out here is the paths. So this system is kind of replacing what backgrounds and a few other things accomplished in the older versions of the Storyteller system, and basically kind of giving us the mechanical basis for how the different characters' kind of history and relationships affect what they can do and what they can get. So we talked about this a little bit before, but I know that we talked about all using the relationship path here to actually cover our, each character's specific relationship to the rest of the crew of the Chimera. So I thought we could maybe just kind of step through those in whatever order people want to do and talk about what we're thinking, get a sense of how that all gels together as a whole crew.
Mine were super easy, so I can start.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
My origin path is Certificate of Deposit, reflecting Sidra's time as a computerized pile of money, taking the asset skills Liberal Arts for finance and Integrity for being an artificial mind. And then my role is Realized Asset for the physical manifestation part of her existence, taking the skills Empathy for learning to understand beings, and Enigmas for sort of delving into the strangeness of the universe. And then the relationship that I took, and the name of this is subject to change, is Bemused Tagalong, with the asset skills Analysis and Larceny to reflect probably how we're interacting with the universe.
All checks out. And so you really are kind of positioning yourself as not having a specific concrete role in the ship, at least to begin with. You're really just kind of along from having gotten picked up.
Yeah. She doesn't really have a role in the ship or the universe.
Mm-hmm.
It's early days.
Yeah. That's the fun.
I guess I can go next, because I definitely have some questions. I'm not exactly sure which way to go on some of these things. So for Origin, I chose the Akashic Bleed. And for equipment, the traditional Ulmast garb. I don't know what that's supposed to do, but I feel like that's an identifier. So that's what I went with.
So
I don't know if it needs to be functional.
I went over this a little bit earlier in the channel, but basically for equipment, what we're thinking is that's basically the.
You got any babies in here?
Hold on just a second.
Children.
I don't think.
Hi, guys. Hello.
Hello.
Okay.
Hi, Casey.
I'm actually not sure where there is one. Nate's a little crabby. So where was I?
Equipment.
Equipment and functionality.
Oh, yeah. So the idea with equipment is that it represents basically whatever kind of thing associated with you physically that you'd carry or wear or whatever that would kind of come into play when you evoke that path. So if it could be something that you wear to indicate to other people that you're you're from that place or that culture. It could be a sword that you use to practice that type of martial arts, anything like that.
Gotcha.
But basically, it's kind of a physical signifier.
Okay.
And it makes it easy to say this type of thing, if this person is wearing it or using it, has this significance mechanically.
Okay. Awesome. And then as far as contacts, are we coming up with like literal contacts or like organizational contacts or...
In each case, basically the contact would be a kind of the primary go-to place if you wanted to use kind of like social means to get something out of that path. So for each one, it could either be a specific character. If you have one in mind, you can give the name and kind of what role they had, or it could just be kind of the role that person has, and then we fill it in with an actual character when it comes up the first time.
Okay, that sounds good. We'll go with like an embassy, like a guy at an embassy for the Olmastian people.
Mm.
And then as far as asset skills for the Akashic Bleed, since the Akashic Bleed is so enigmatic, I'm going to go with Enigmas. And because it can destroy reality as we know it, I'm going to go with Integrity. So those will be my two asset skills for Origin. My role, I'm assuming, is going to be lawyer. And this is my role as an Olmastian. It's my role on the ship. It's my role kind of everywhere. So it's kind of an Uber role. Mm. My equipment for that is a business card.
Nice.
My asset skills are liberal arts, law, and persuasion. And then I haven't quite figured out what I'm going to do for the Chimera. But if we go with Kacey's solution to have my mech plug into the Chimera at some point or somehow, I kind of look at it as the Chimera represents his freedom almost. He can actually be himself in this space where he can't be that way anywhere else in the universe. So it kind of represents a place of like safety for him in a way he can't get other places. So I put down freedom through captivity in that as the relationship.
How very 9 Inch Nails of you.
So the effect that keeps him sane inside the suits is then sort of plugged into the rest of the ship, so he can walk around without the suit.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right. And that kind of like how is kind of why he ended up on the Chimera and kind of embedded himself with the team.
You might be able to shorthand that to Sanctuary, which is basically the same thing.
Yeah. Okay, I like that. Sanctuary.
Sanctuary.
Yeah, exactly.
Sanctuary.
And keep going.
No, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say when we talked about this before, we talked about a few different kind of possibilities for what the physical signifier was going to be, and so did you pick one?
For the Chimera, I don't know yet for that.
Were you leaning towards ankle bracelet?
Oh yeah. I was leaning toward an ankle bracelet. I really wanted to go with something like classically like this guy's.
That's definitely the most on theme.
Yeah. So ankle bracelet is what it is. Cool. Sorry, when you were saying the equipment, I was spacing out on that. That makes sense. All right, ankle bracelet it is, and then asset skills. I think I'd probably go with. Gosh, this is hard.
Is this where like the mech pilot skills come in?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess that would make sense. We could do with pilot and technology then.
Mm-hmm. And that would make sense with the combination of working with the ship as well as the mech piloting aspect.
All right, we'll do that then. All right, and that's me.
Cool.
That's Roleth.
Cool. So, shall we do Dag next?
Okay. So origin, I've got Reuben. Asset skills are brawl and athletics. Now, do those asset skills translate to an extra dot on the skills section, or just delineate same as asset skills?
If you have asset skills, then you get a free skill trick at 2 dots and another one at 4 dots.
Okay.
And a free specialty at 3 dots.
Okay.
So you get some free stuff, and then they also come into play when you actually evoke the path in order to get a mechanical benefit.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So contacts, I think there's maybe like one other Reuben who is adventurous enough to want to leave the planet. They're mostly naked hippie artists. But there's maybe one other Reuben running around just being a interstellar recognized artist.
Brayden, can I ask if these guys are like hippies that kind of just like feel the air and communicate with light, and why brawl?
Good question.
Should that maybe be a
he had a
roll
different
skill?
upbringing than a normal Reuben, right?
He
Because he
did.
was raised by Quay from childhood. So
He did.
Yeah,
But I'm not sure.
That might go better in the role asset skill.
Yeah, that's kind of what
My
I
role as a bodyguard.
Yeah. Maybe
Okay, so I can move some things around there. Then integrity, maybe?
That's probably good.
Okay.
Or high on integrity.
It's a very, very integral team,
I feel like we're gonna need it.
That's true.
Let's see. Yeah, so contacts, equipment. There isn't really anything as a Reuben that he would have.
This could also, if you could have it be like Reuben in Exile or something like that, because it could also be if there was anything that kind of like represented his.
His main visual signifier as a Reuben is looking like a giant rhino man.
I mean, you could, if they're all naked hippie artists, you could just pick nudity as your equipment. Like that's totally viable.
Does that mean he has to rip his clothes off in order to evoke his path? The strictness of whether you have to use your equipment in order to, or if it's just one means of evoking it is sort of ambiguous.
It'll be one means.
Okay, one means.
Yeah, I was thinking rather than just being like gray that we've been watching a lot of nature documentaries and interesting birds. I was thinking some cool fluorescent colors.
Nice.
Not to step on your toes too much, Finn, but something along those lines. So origin Reuben, role bodyguard, and that's his training as a bodyguard. So persuasion and aim probably.
Was that where you went to brawl?
Yeah. Well, I thought I'd move brawl down to relationship then for the Chimera crew.
Cool. And so what do you?
So roll. I thought for as a bodyguard, since most of the structure of that trained him is gone, I thought that there'd be like one Qualian who, like the one Qualian who told him, hey, maybe don't go around wearing your uniform anymore. Here's some clothes. So that guy. I'm temporarily calling him Quandrew.
No, you're permanently calling him Quinn.
Yeah, that's true.
So Quandrew gave him like a spacey jumpsuit thing. And then so that would be aim and persuasion for that, and then relationship. I haven't specified what that would be. It might just be something else along the lines of bodyguard, or just muscle.
The wharf.
So that would be brawl and analysis. I was thinking for the asset skill, and then the equipment is just the
voice box.
Yeah, the voice box.
Oh, yeah, the voice box.
The Jabber
Oh, good. Nice.
I like that. That's cute.
Nice.
Well, and let's finish the aliens. So that leaves us with Theron next.
So,
Come on, Catman.
for origin, Paravatis of the Aeloroi. Paravatis is literally means transgressor, and it's the appellation that he's earned, it being the fact that he's a religious outcast and in exile and can't go home to his home planet.
Can I just interject the coolness of having a Unitarian minister playing a religious outcast?
Well, that's it's sort of not necessarily by accident. But,
Okay.
Certainly, when I was putting this character together, I was drawn in this direction by certain proclivities of my own. So, contacts. This is where Emporos, the mechanical alien intelligence that lives inside of his head, and is basically the reason why he's a Paravatis. This is where that relationship comes in. So his contact is this being that lives inside of him. And Josh, we should talk more. We'll get to this in the power section about exactly how this is going to work out mechanically. Yep. But I think we have a pretty good understanding of there's a voice in his head, or there's a means by which he's getting external commands. He's aware of them as being external. He's not comfortable with them at a deep level, but he accepts that they're part of him at this point because he's been living with them for several years by the start of play. Equipment, he has some basic equipment that is of his people as an Aeloros.
Does that include the crotch so black that light cannot escape it?
You really zeroed in on this kilt thing, man. I
can't get over it.
Yeah, so he doesn't, as I said in the Slack, he does not wear a lot of clothes because he has this thing going on with his spots that they change, and they have a value in Aileros society for both communication and also for stealth purposes, so they're not going to wear a lot of clothing over that. But he does wear a kilt out of respect to everybody else around him, and what's called a manica, which is a sort of shoulder guard thing. It's a piece of Roman military equipment. And he carries a pistol and he carries a sword, and those things are all of traditional Aileros manufacture. They're all things that he fled Rhea carrying with him. And then the asset skills for the origin are agility and weaponry. Agility because it's the primary skill used in stealth, and definitely stealth training is an essential part of his training as someone who is going to go from being a child to being an adult in the heavily militarized kind of stalking jungle cat society of the Aileroi. And then weaponry because training with weapons, and specifically with his sword, with his Kopesh, is an essential part of that background. His role, so I see this as governing kind of the intermediary period. He fled his home planet as an exile, and then the place where he spent the longest amount of time before the start of play was several years that he spent as the sort of sheriff slash like game warden kind of character on a very distant marginal planet called Fingarol, that because of its odd mixture of sentient species where nobody has a majority and the relationships between them are okay but a little bit edgy, they have a long-standing tradition of bringing in someone from the outside who isn't a member of any of the leading species on the planet to act as their sheriff. So he managed to get into that position. Exactly how, maybe something we'll work out more in the course of play. So I just have that listed as the sheriff that stalks.
That's awesome.
I don't know what the contact is going to be for that. I mean, probably it's just somebody from Fingarol. And Fingarol is both obscure enough, but also like a little bit of a tourist destination that I could see a number of different ways for it to pop up, and I'd be sort of happy to leave that to you as the story, what are we saying, teller, guide, path worker?
I don't know.
As the story guide,
Story guide.
I don't have any problem just handing that over to you. I don't need it to be a specific person. Equipment, I think he still has a badge. It's not the current badge of the current person. My best guess is that he probably had to leave the job quickly. We haven't quite determined how we all got together on the Chimera, but that's my sort of thought, is that he got sort of like, he had to make a beeline to it quickly. But he still has a badge. That would be one possible piece of equipment. And the asset skills are analysis, because that's the observation and also the like crime solving skill, and survival, because he went from one forest world, his home planet, to another forest world, Fingerroll, and he was in charge of kind of making sure that dangerous animals didn't bother the community and that kind of thing. So survival is an essential skill for him there. And then finally, his relationship, I think that Theron views himself as the protector of the Chimera and its crew. That's the role I think that he's a person without a community who's very aware of how cut off from everything about his sense of community and sense of self he is. And so he's been looking in the years since his exile for ways to kind of make up for that, and he's sort of made up for it in a limited way on Fingerroll, but there weren't a lot of deep personal relationships. It was more like he had a role there. And this is more like he's trying to actually make the crew his new prowl, his new group of people with whom he is closely bonded to. The last one, of course, ended violently, so he's hoping to have that work out better. So the two asset skills for that are athletics, because his role as part of the crew is he's by far the largest member of the crew by I think at least 2 feet, with the exception of Raelith when he's in his mech. So sort of he's like the guy who lifts and carries stuff to some degree, maybe not alone. I'm sure Deng can do some of that because he's also very strong, but I see that as being he's like one of the physical guys in the crew.
He's the one who reaches the tall shelves.
Right. Yeah, exactly. He's the guy who's opening jars, moving furniture, that kind of thing. And then aim, because he needs a specialty in artillery in order to just operate the weapon systems of the ship, which I see as being his role by default. I'm not saying he has to do that alone, but he at least should be able to do that, and so you need a specialty of artillery in order to operate the weapons.
Seems good.
Yes.
And last but not least.
Okay, well, I guess Molly's origin is Earth, but that's a little complicated because it's not there anymore. So I guess I was thinking, I don't know who she'd have as a contact from there. I guess we know there are some humans kind of around, but I don't know that she has any direct interaction with them, so I guess we could just leave it open as, someone still alive who is from there, who remembers the place. Well, I guess it wasn't gone all that long ago, but and then as far as equipment, I'm trying to think if there's anything that she would have taken just with her when she left. She probably took her diploma, which doesn't really have much worth anymore, but
I kind of like the diploma, just since we established that she has that and it's completely useless now. I like the idea that she just kind of has this useless degree that she can kind of brandish at people.
Right, there's
3, yes.
What is access?
Access is just if there's some identified thing that you can get into, some place that you can go or some group that you can participate in or something.
Yeah,
that we'd want to note, then we just put it there. You don't
Okay.
need to put anything there
All
if you
right.
don't have something specific.
Gotcha. And then I guess I was thinking possibly integrity for an asset skill, because just the fact that Earth is gone, and so she sort of had to deal with that. And then maybe medicine, because she was a doctor in some part there as well. And then for her next path, I guess and she was sort of a biotechnical engineer, if we can use that as a role.
That works.
And I have a couple thoughts for what we could do for a contact. Potentially, there was the person that hired her when she first left Earth to go to this job, but the job was kind of a bust. And I think in the time that she's left there and been gone, she's made a number of contacts that are more black markety, because there's been a lot of different ways to get some motes, but she, again, with no credentials, they're essentially not legal. So probably her contact is someone from there who just, cues her into jobs, or has up to this point. And I was thinking her equipment might be her goggles. And then for asset skills, technology and science.
Yep.
And then for her relationship, I was thinking of her as, we sort of mentioned this before in discussion, as the captain, since she was kind of the one who has been pursuing the chimera and trying to find it, and is, I think, indirectly been the reason that everyone sort of ended up on it. But I guess her context for that is sort of the ship. And then...
That makes sense. And you do have like a unique relationship to the chimera based on the kind of history that we've sketched out. So,
and so I maybe for the equipment, I don't know if we could use her hand for that, or if there's some, some object that she found on the chimera that she kind of keeps on her.
I like the hand. Okay. Offhand. I was about to say offhand.
Yeah, it is her offhand actually.
Yeah, it's literally off of her. So.
And then I guess for the asset skills for that, I was thinking command, and then possibly enigmas, just because she's got to figure shit out.
Yep. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I think that kind of covers it for everybody. So I feel like we all feel pretty good about that, and we get a pretty good kind of picture of the little miniature narrative that took each person to where they are as a member of this crew from that. It seems like that went pretty smoothly. I don't think we had too much trouble or anything. So the next couple steps, I'm opening up my little rules that I wrote up here again. If I can figure out where I wrote them. So the next couple steps are the attribute dots and the skills. So I'm actually going to be right back, but if everybody wants to, you can just get started kind of filling those in, and as soon as I'm back, if you have any questions or anything you want to ask about, just go ahead.
Okay.
This is where we play music?
Yes.
Yeah, there might be an interlude. So I know for myself... Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, or we could just cut to the part where we start talking again.
But since we do have this moment, I'm going to share. So Theron is definitely physical primary character. Other people want to share their primaries, just so we have that information.
I'm going mental.
Mental.
I'm going to be social.
Mm-hmm. Ranged fighter with
some
defensive.
So I'm sorry. Where's your 8 going? I guess is my question. It's 864, right?
Sorry, I thought we were talking just general roll.
No.
So 8's. Oh, I see. Yeah, 8's going in physical.
Okay, so 2 primarily physical, 2 primarily mental, 1 primarily social. I think that's a pretty good breakdown. Especially in this system, which seems to place an emphasis on not letting one of these categories get too overwhelmingly important mechanically, right? Like most of the storyteller games. To be honest, 8 out of 10 characters are going to focus on physicality no matter what. This is a little bit more balanced of a system, which is one of the things that's good about it.
Yeah, this is kind of generally different for me because I haven't in pretty much any of the games that I've played done a just straight up brawler fighter min-maxer kind of a character.
Yeah, I think it's because of that, the quality in the system, that it is not just gummed up in combat rules, that makes it more interesting to play that.
Yeah.
Right? You can feel like, this is just one of several possible paths, and the other people in the party won't all be doing the same thing. And that Theron is also in a similar place, right? He's a big, scary guy with a sword, right? That is the character that I'm playing. But I don't feel as bad about trying to optimize that end of things because I know and expect that that's only going to be one facet. So, like, he's going to shine. He's going to be like the guy who's like, okay, I'm in charge of killing all these dudes. You work out what's going on the computer. Like, those are going to be 2 equally viable things for us to do on screen.
Yeah, and well, I'm also kind of a brawler. I think Dang's probably going to focus a little more on looking out for who the problem people are. Like, okay, that guy is going to try to do this, so you might want to take care of that or something. Yeah, cunning and discipline looks really interesting.
I mean, if 8 years of running Exalted taught me anything, it's that a guy who punches things with his fists or shoots people and a guy who hits people with a sword are completely different.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah, that is true. I'm also just sort of curious, does anybody else have a dump stat? I mean, I identified
I've
pretty
got
quickly.
2, actually.
There was at least one that I was going to have exactly 1 dot in.
Which one is that?
Grace. Theron is definitely not social.
I was hoping that was the answer.
All right. Yeah, I'm also 1 grace.
Yeah.
Nice.
And one
Let me do
reason.
the talking, guys.
Oh no.
Okay, 1 reason.
I dumped
All right.
might and presence.
Okay.
Oh really?
Yep.
Huh.
That makes
I can
sense.
see that definitely. Not a big use of mental or social or physical force, but high mental force. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I couldn't really dump anything. I mean, might and finesse are my lowest stats, but there's still 2, so...
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I didn't dump anything. Everything's got at least 2.
Well, Josh is back, so should we get into it?
Sure.
I
So,
do not have enough skill points, I'll tell you
Yeah.
that.
For sure.
I don't think
Yeah.
anybody does.
Correct.
Yeah, and the numbers that I threw out here, I mean, I feel good about 23 or whatever it is as a default for picking skills at the beginning, just because that tends to be pretty close within what we're used to. But the numbers of the transformation points certainly are kind of just, back of the ass, like pulled out of nowhere. So if it turns out that it's an issue, back of the ass.
Not even the front.
If it turns out it's an issue, we could definitely kind of tweak that. But so is everybody kind of through those sections,
Almost.
or do we have any questions?
Yeah, I mean, I did some work based on the old adventure skill spread or point spread, and so then I had to go back and redo the work with the new chart you gave us. But the chart, I think, is almost exactly like the things you have on the transformation point chart as more expensive balance out roughly relative to the adventure chart, because there's 25 points instead of 13. So it's right around the same kind of, I think, overall value.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I haven't spent any transformation points yet.
When we call these things transformation points, are we talking about our characters actually being different from the races that we, or species that we came from, or are we above baseline to our species, or just above baseline in general?
I would say that. So a couple things. So one, all of the old Storyteller games that we played with this, they always have this elaborate concept in the character creation where you kind of create a baseline and then you do transformation stuff on top of it. Mm-hmm. But they're also all set up so that it makes no sense to actually treat it like you're statting up your mortal self, because your points are way too valuable doing other things with them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I'm definitely not trying to do anything like that. Just what we wind up with is fine.
Okay.
In terms of level relative to base species, I guess what I'm going to say is that when I say baseline here, I really mean baseline human, and it's possible either for somebody else to be kind of in a superhero tier based on them being more powerful or more skilled or whatever than other members of their species, or just because their species by default is much more powerful than a human.
Okay.
Either of those is fine by me, whatever you feel like makes more sense, but definitely do have an idea of which one that is, so that when people start to come up later, we can kind of account for that.
Gotcha.
And then when it comes to asset skills, what are there any points attributed to that just for being an asset skill?
There's no free points to it. It's just the tricks and the specialties.
Gotcha.
Are free.
Okay.
And those are free whenever you buy them up to that point. So if you do it with the point spread, if you do it with the transformation points, or if you do it later on through play, those are all fine.
Also, when it comes to skills, this probably doesn't matter after transformation, but normally you can only spend up to 3 points in a skill when you're doing the baseline stuff.
Yeah, I just didn't bother to leave that in because it's obnoxious.
Yeah, that would not have worked.
I never found that to really carry its own weight in the character creation system. I mean, I also took out bonus points for the same reason, because it's always really silly that you go in and make a Nova or something and you have this one kind of points and then this completely different kind of points.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. 100%. All right, then. Transformation points. All
Yeah.
right, so
Also,
I
I
think-
just called them transformation points because that's what they are in Adventure, and I guess I could have called them like glory points or something. Maybe that would have been better. But
Or like development points.
I think it's the most neutral term of the pre-existing ones, and it's not. I mean, I think that's part of why it lends itself to that, right? It's sort of generic, which Story Path Clue likes. It likes kind of broad, generic terms. I assume because the individual games are actually going to change some of these terms into whatever they use. Like Scion is probably going to have its own nomenclature, right?
yeah, Scion has like they have like a legend stat, and there's a bunch of specific stuff about they have all these things called like boons and other stuff that I don't understand how they work, but exactly that. There's a bunch of really specific nomenclature for that game that probably doesn't apply at all to the Trinity Universe stuff. So if everybody's either done or done-ish on that, we get into kind of the most fiddly part, and the part where it's kind of the most benefit for us to all be talking over it as we go, which is essentially the powers. So I mentioned this in the chat earlier, but I'll just kind of reiterate it here. As under the system as we've kind of set it up here, I see there as kind of being 4 options for how you can have something that would kind of count as a superpower. Like, number 1 would be simply taking something as a skill trick, just having basically this better than human level of ability that you can apply to one particular skill that's based in one of your asset skills usually, and that gets you some specific but not enormous like extra capability. The second one would be buying something as an edge, which essentially is just a passive bonus that you get in certain contexts based on what we kind of define the nature of that ability to be. The third is to take one of each of those in kind of combination in a way that synergizes to make something even kind of better for you. And then the fourth is knacks, and knacks are very much kind of the catch-all here. There's 3 levels of them, kind of the way that there are in Adventure. And they if anybody wants an ability that involves spending your power resource, in this case the glory points, or just any other kind of thing that kind of requires a custom write-up that's kind of outside of the bounds of these other systems I just defined, then we want to plug it in there. And in most cases, I think what we would do is just kind of talk out what level it's probably at, and then we can work out the exact mechanical details later.
Okay.
So
Now,
do we want
My
to go
question was gonna be,
through attributes and skills?
I figure we could just kind of touch on that as we get into the power stuff. I was actually going to ask about who we think is going to have the simplest power suite. Like the
Are you
least
breaking up or am I
complicated
breaking
kind
up?
I think you're breaking
You're
up.
both breaking up.
Damn
It's
it.
me.
Oh, shit. Yeah, because Jeff's in the clear.
Yeah, everyone sounds okay to me. I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Skype's breaking up.
But just with
good.
you guys.
Oh.
Oh.
You sound okay now.
Had a good run.
Okay.
I think my power suite's probably going to be the simplest because I was basically just modeling it on Aberrant, specifically on absorption, quantum bolt, force field.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I want to say throw a quantum bolt, am I going to be rolling? What would that be, like? Either finesse or vitality, depending on what I'm doing, plus aim, plus quantum bolt, or it gives
It
you
would probably be aim.
yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be that and a skill. It's probably going to be aim, but there's probably something else you could argue. I guess I can't think of something offhand, but that's what would make sense to me. If it's
But then the knack.
quantum bolt.
Mhm.
For something like an energy bolt, we're probably looking at a level 2 knack if it's just kind of garden variety like laser beam, and then a level 3 if it's some kind of super fancy laser beam, like a Dr. Spectrum kind of like laser beam boutique.
Mhm.
bespoke laser beams.
Oh, those bespoke.
Yeah,
laser beams.
I'm kind of thinking that they trained Dang to use his energy manipulation like season 1 Jon Stewart Green Lantern, just bubbles and beams, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot of bubbles and beams.
Mm-hmm. I did think about, like, because of the shape of his arms, instead of a bolt, if it was like a slash, if he threw out kind of an arc of energy, but that can maybe be a I don't know, a special instance thing, or maybe something I level up to.
Mm-hmm. And so the other two things you said, it was absorption and
Force
And
field.
force field, yeah.
So the force field, my instinct is actually to just have that be an edge. Probably adds adds successes. So essentially, it adds to your defense in certain circumstances. That's probably the easiest way. And then it's just a question of how big of an effect you want it to have in terms of how much you buy it up to.
Okay. Yeah, because I was thinking that the force field he could use in interesting ways to, like, block off a doorway, or you put up a force field that is somewhere not immediately around him, not too far away.
And the edges actually work well for that,
Okay.
because then narratively, if we get to a point where, like, I want to use this to block off a door, then as long as you can kind of come up with the skill roll that makes sense for enabling you to do that, then we would apply the successes still to that the same way.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good versatile system, sounds like.
That's the hope.
Yeah.
And one of the things they, in all the different PDFs and docs and everything that we kind of pulled together to try to make this work, they say a lot of different places that adding dice is rare, and typical powers don't kind of add them the way that they do in something like Classic Labyrinth or whatever. So the ability for, like, 1 or 2 or 3 extra successes to really make a big difference in opposition to another roll is a lot bigger, because generally speaking, unless somebody's, like, using one of these really rare, like, once a game type effects, they're going to be rolling a max of 12 dice. So 3 successes makes a big difference against that, kind of no matter what.
Okay.
And then, so absorption, what aspect of that are you really hoping to focus on? Because, like, if I remember correctly, the aberrant version of that, you, like, reduce energy damage and then you get stronger. Is that how that works?
Kind of.
I never had that that. So.
Yeah,
That sounds right.
Yeah, energy damage is converted into points of some other power, or like temporary dots that you have to spend within the scene, I think. I might want to fiddle with that a little bit, so that it's I can use it on Quantum Bolt or Force Field, and I can potentially keep it around for more than a scene.
Would that be like one of those things that gives you a temporary edge? That seems like a mechanic that cropped up a lot in the literature.
Yeah, I think that's basically what that would wind up being, is that you would, and again, that kind of makes it flexible for those things. We could make it so that if you take damage, you have the ability to absorb from it, and then that lets you filter it into a temporary edge in one of X kind of different categories. So you could say, oh, I'm channeling this to my force field, or I'm channeling this to my bolt, or I'm just channeling this to, like, I don't know, be faster, depending on what's within the range of, like, what the character is, supposed to be capable of. I would probably take that as a level 2 or a level 3 knack, depending on how kind of flexible we want it to be.
Okay. Yeah, we can talk about the specifics of that later, and how we can move points around.
But I think that gives us kind of a good idea. So who wants to go next?
I can go next. Mine is kind of weird, as I think is expected. So I took 2 edges. One is assassin wiring, which essentially gives me a 1-up on scale in self-defense situations.
Mm-hmm.
And then I took Scion of the Market, which is a 3-scale boost for manipulating boats. Does that sound reasonable?
that seems pretty reasonable to me. And it should cover a pretty broad range of the stuff that you want to be doing. Like certainly any of these kind of roles to either dig out financial details on somebody, or to kind of play with currencies and collapse economies, any of that kind of stuff, this should apply to pretty well. And I like modeling it as scale because it makes it easy to kind of conceptualize this in terms of when you start going up, not against like other individuals who want to manipulate the market, but like big institutions. Cool. Like that, because like I'm thinking like in pure terms of like financial manipulation, like bigger banks or something would have like a higher scale rating, or certainly like the central bankers at Ardor would have some kind of powerful scale multiplier, since they've been doing all this stuff for so long.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then for next, I took MoatNet access, which is like essentially the connection that allows her to do everything sort of cyberkinetically, and Flush with Cash, which is just to have money at will.
That one you actually don't need to take anything extra for. That you can really just leverage your path.
Oh, good. Then I got 4 points back. And I will probably put those into skills eventually. And then I took a bunch of things as skill tricks. Like a lot of the stuff that I had laid out when I was thinking about powers earlier. Under liberal arts, I took Spider Knows Her Web, which is the ability to find out information about people and find connections through research. And then I also took Expert Researcher, which is the one that's actually listed in the manual. And then for larceny, I took Bolster and Deplete, and Move the Earth, which was the market affecting one. And then under analysis, which is kind of a super weird skill, I took Creature of the Marketplace, which is the one for stealth in markets and financial areas, and Sense Value. And then
of course.
Under enigmas, I took what did I take here? Oh yeah, I made up Maze of Shells, which allows her to rapidly generate and dissolve shell corporations.
That could actually be pretty useful.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And I feel like that all that stuff you just listed goes really well into what I was talking about in terms of the option of having the skill tricks and the edges that synergize with each other. Because a lot of those you're going to be rolling something that then your financial anima is basically going to help you succeed at more effectively.
Yes. Oh, and I think I've got one that I could put in empathy, but I didn't think of one yet, so I'll have to do that. Yep.
Cool. All right. Who's next?
We can take me next, but I have no idea how to model what I want to do.
Well, so let's figure out what kind of capabilities you would have. Just not looking at the system at all yet, but like what kind of things do you think you'd be able to do? Kind of outside the norm.
Well, I mean, so I guess one I see him having like this duality between what his normal like outside of the mech form is and what his internal, like having like a dormancy state or like a like Jekyll and Hyde kind of mechanic that goes with it, where there's one set of abilities available when I'm in the mech and one set that's on the other side of that. And so I'm like sort of thinking about like, okay, like as Raleth, right? He should be an expert lawyer. He should be able to like I see a lot of edges around like argument and edges around like succeeding in the courtroom. So that's kind of like, and then maybe like a minor in dealing with the Akashic bleed. But I see that more as like being a lot of skill tricks and then a lot of like maybe a few edges here and there for that kind of stuff. I don't see him as being like a like a Quantum 5 kind of guy outside of the mech.
And that's mostly kind of like superhuman or super alien, I guess, level of ability in these kind of comprehensible realms. So that
these really specific areas. And then in the mech, like I just see it as being like a fun, like I get to jet around in space and shoot missiles and stuff. Like I see like being able to fly in an atmosphere and being able to fly in space. So I figured that would probably be a knack, right?
Yeah, and so I guess my upfront question is going to be like, do you want anything kind of weird, or is it really kind of the standard, kind of mech package you'd expect if you just find a mech out on the street?
In the dumpster.
Yeah,
just kind of there.
Fell off a truck.
I see it as being standard to begin the game with, and then I see it as getting more weird as time progresses and as we get experience points and spend that kind of stuff. But I really think like the sort of like it starts standard and then grows into like something weird, and what that weirdness is and what direction that is, I'm not really sure. But this Moonin should not be a normal like mech, but it should appear like one and make me feel like one.
It seems like you were describing it having like some psychic capability that might be interesting to use offensively.
Yeah, I was thinking about that more in terms of like the relationship between Josh and Moonin rather than like Moonin and R'Leth. Like Moonin knows things and tells R'Leth about them, but R'Leth doesn't know how it knows or why it knows.
And that definitely strikes me as a good area to kind of potentially develop and play if it comes up more often than, if there's something that turns up that it's like, oh, this is a way that really makes sense to utilize this as something like narratively that comes up again in the future. We can kind of start to model it there. But I like the idea of kind of keeping that narrative to begin with and then finding out how it works.
Right.
So in terms of modeling the mech, so my first thought on this, and just jump in if anybody thinks that there's a different way to handle this, but my first thought is basically to kind of split that up into 3 knacks. One for movement, one for survivability, and one for offense. So movement is going to kind of cover flying and, moving really quick and anything else like that. Survivability would include like, being able to exist in a zero-G environment and having all this extra toughness and like, any type of specific resistance to the Akashic Bleed that it might have, if that's a thing. And then the third one would just be your missiles and, all that other kind of stuff. And we'd probably just wind up kind of coming up with a list of the kind of special effects you can get out of fighting or shooting things off with this.
Okay. So take them all as next, basically, and I guess that makes sense, since they're all kind of basically like activated powers. Okay. So what levels should these be at, I guess? So like flight, like I am not as super familiar with Adventures next. I really got into more like the lore of it than the actual gameplay. I never got a chance to really play it. So I'm not super familiar with how knack powers are like scaled.
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily the most clear, and we're not necessarily on exactly the same scale here, except for kind of relatively speaking. Like we're on a 1 to 3 scale, but it's not necessarily the same 1 to 3 scale. My thought is that nothing you're doing movement wise is really that crazy, so you should just be able to take that as a level 1. I don't think there's anything wild there. And then both the offense and the defense, it's a question kind of similar to what I said with the quantum bolt for Braden. It's kind of a question of, do you want kind of a bog standard version of this, or do you want one with fancy upgrades? And take it either as a 2 or 3, and if we take it as a 3, then we work out some special effects that go along with that for the additional purchase price.
All right. I'd probably go with level 2 on both of those. I mean, these are things that we can upgrade as the story goes, right? Like we're going to get traditional experience points and stuff.
Yep, and so again, that's a great thing for, especially if we have a session where we wind up having some dramatic moment where some new capability presents itself. That's a really great way to justify spending XP on something like that and bumping it up to a level 3 power.
So just to clarify, flight is a level 1. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I think. I actually don't remember what level of a power it was under the Aberrant.
It was a level 2 power, but it was a quantum minimum 1 level 2, which means it's the low end of level 2. I think that's aggressive pricing, but I don't disagree with it. I think that there's if it's not, we're not playing D&D, right? So positioning on the field is not is mission critical.
You guys literally live in a spaceship, so it's not like his flight power is going to help you guys get to stuff on high ledges here. Like,
Right. No, that's what we have Theron for.
Right.
Exactly.
yes. Don't worry, he's not going to step on your jaw-reaching toes. Okay. Down to 2. Who wants to go?
You want to go, Casey?
Sure. I'm also going to need some sort of talking through because I have a general idea of what I want to do, but not really how to do it.
I'm glad this seems to have mostly more or less sorted itself in terms of complexity. So I think we're on the right track there.
That's good. So there's sort of 2 layers to Molly. There's the gadgets that she has. So her goggles, which I'm thinking, like she has a couple little like nodes by her temples, and her goggles actually sort of, she can manipulate them with her thoughts because they can communicate to her thoughts directly. But predominantly they give her a bunch of different spectrums, and I kind of liked the idea of saying, well, she's got this many spectrums and these are established and these other ones we can establish when it becomes relevant, and then once we hit the max, that's what she's got. And the other things was I thought that would be her access point to like getting into computers and networks and the internet and that kind of thing, and just sort of an ambient, like when she looks around a room, she can get information about like heights of things, and if she's looking at an individual, ambient information about like species, gender, predictive age, as much as that, and that's accessible. I'm guessing the Trovan don't tend to register very well.
Probably not.
But for certain species that are really well known, it's and then her hand, which has distance capabilities and can feed into her goggles with information. I'm thinking it can form basic other shapes, so it could, if she needs like a hammer or a screwdriver or something like a very just like a simple solid shape, those are really easily to form. And if she wants it to be something more complicated, like something with moving parts, especially intricate moving parts, that would be something that she would have had to design beforehand and program it to say, when I want this is all the parts that need to be formed in this like layout, and then the nanobots would note from there. But she couldn't just be like, oh, I want a gun that I haven't designed yet, because they wouldn't really know what to do.
So that basically gives us kind of a hook for dramatic editing there, where if you can kind of justify a reason why she would have put together this particular type of thing in the past, you can say, oh, I happen to have already had that ready.
Right. And I'm thinking she's probably got like it can solder, and she's probably got a means to, for some kind of just general illumination, and probably some small weapon, just because like if you have a floating nanobot hand, why wouldn't you make it at least one gun? But okay, so there's that, and then the other component that I was thinking of is just her general capacity for like technical skills. So I was thinking a little bit of hacking, although I don't know if I'm stepping on anybody's toes for that. I don't know if Rolith is going to be our kind of hacker guy, although it didn't sound like that was going to be too much. I guess my thoughts were that at this point in time, like computer technology and technology are so complexly interwoven that you kind of need to know both in order to do, like, especially if you want to work with, something like cybernetics or nanotechnology. Like you can't just understand the machine. You need to understand how to program them as well. So giving her some sort of capacity to like hack into networks and things. And then like gadgetery abilities, just like the ability to build stuff. And then I kind of wanted to have a specialty that I was going to call hybrid technology, which is saying that when she's designing something that incorporates at least 2 of the 3 types of like known life, or she's better at it than when she's dealing with one individually. That's
excellent. And that's a pretty straightforward edge right there. Is just you get extra successes when working on a technology like that. That works really well. It fits the theme, and it clearly pushes like narrative directions in order to be able to maximize the utility of that. So I like that a lot.
Cool.
Plus it means that you just automatically have a bonus anytime you're working with the Chimera, which again I think is good and fitting.
Nice.
So going over that whole list,
Yeah.
the one thing that I think I would model as a knack is the hand.
Okay.
And rather than try to break that down in a lot of detail, I think I would honestly buy it as a level 3 knack.
Okay.
And then we can kind of get into the, the nitty-gritty shit about what it can do from there. But just kind of model that as a holistic thing, because trying to be like, what does it mean in terms of like capabilities that you've got this hand that can detach and it can fly around, it can also make different shapes for only certain specific like that. I mean,
It's a little convoluted.
It's a lot easier to just kind of handle that holistically.
Cool.
I think.
That sounds good.
And then most of the other stuff, I think, similar to the kind of build that Vin was doing, is kind of a mix of the skill, tricks, and edges.
Yeah. Well, I put science and technology up to 5 each. So she's got a couple tricks that she can, I think, put into, that's like 2 tricks for each of them.
Yep.
So I can probably, I figure we could, for technology, like some kind of gadgeteering ability could fit in there pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe some hacking ability as well.
Yeah, and I think there's, I don't remember exactly what there is, but I think that there's something like...
Yeah, there are. I think I
hacking.
highlighted them. I think there's like 3 in there. And I was like, all 3 of those are good, actually. Those would work pretty well for her. But now let me open up the thing and find it. Okay. So for technology, magic hands, which is having like just a really good touch with machinery. Fast hacker, which is just being able to get in and out of stuff, and then hardware specialist, which is being proficient with electronic devices. And I kind of liked all of those because it just seemed like, well, that kind of covers, like electronics.
Yeah, I think that all works.
Okay.
And then it would just be a question of above and beyond the one that we identified for the mixed type technology. It would be what other areas would you think that she'd be like unusually capable in, and that's where we'd want to put the edges.
Okay.
Basically.
So I would say, I'm trying to think of like how to describe it. So all of those are essentially like magic hands is for working with machinery, and fast hackers for working with computer programs, and hardware specialist is for working with electronic devices. And I guess this would be for working with something that would be like for example, creating Ding's voice box. I would think of as something that would be like hybrid technology, because you have to use, part of what she's doing is figuring out a way to like tap into the way he thinks, so that those, organic thoughts can then be translated through machinery into voice. Or when she's working on, as you mentioned, working on the chimera, and she has to incorporate, Akashic and biological and mechanical elements, or anytime she's like fiddling probably with her own hand, or like pretty much anything interacting with any of the characters where there's that component of, well, there's sort of 2 things at once. I think that's where the edge would kind of kick in for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we just... Yeah, and I guess I just need to know like what that would cost, because I'm trying to keep track of what I've spent so I don't overspend.
I take that as an edge, and then it is kind of up to you how many, if you want that to be 1, 2, or 3.
Okay, and I guess remind me of the advantage of like a 1 to 2 to 3. Like, well,
it's just how many automatic successes you get on rolls related to that, as long as you roll at least 1 natural success.
Okay.
So if you roll your dice pool and you get 1 success and you've got a +3 edge, then it counts as 4 total.
Okay, I kind of like that, but and then what's there sort of a scale edge? Just means it's like the next scale up, or it can be.
With a scale edge, instead of getting extra successes automatically, you go up that scale chart, which basically means it's a certain amount of extra successes based on what your scale winds up being relative to somebody else that you're impacting. So if your scale increases, that's particularly good if you're like, if you're like for hand-to-hand combat, for example.
Right.
your scale normally, if you're fighting another guy who's the same size as you, is going to be around the same thing. So if you scale up, all of a sudden, you're kind of hitting like the Hulk. Like you're kind of fighting on another level.
Gotcha.
Compared to what they have.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure if that would apply here.
I don't think that would really apply for most of this stuff.
Okay, and broad edge just means, what does it mean?
Broad edge is basically just a case where, basically, because going into this, I didn't want to try to be really specific about like how narrow we have to be about what one edge can cover, because trying to like make the rules for that kind of thing, a lot of the time it winds up being really difficult to like get it exactly right, and then it gets nitpicky and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured it would be better just to have two categories. And so like if something feels like it's reasonably narrow to everybody, then it's a normal edge. If something, we look at it, we go, oh, that's going to apply all the time, then we just tack on a price and it's a broad edge.
Okay.
So for something like the hybrid thing that you talked about, like that's going to apply a lot like to everybody in the party and to the chimera all the time, but a lot of stuff that it doesn't have any application to in the broader world. So I don't think it needs to be a broad edge.
Okay, so I might do it as an edge 3, because I like the thought of her just being particularly adept in this really specialized area.
So then I think if you get that and you buy the hand power, it sounds like probably we can use the skill tricks at least to begin with to kind of cover everything else. And then we have kind of a rich area of thematic stuff that we can use to buy up further edges or something in the future as we play.
Okay, and then what do we want to do for the goggles? Do we want to just make that a trick or like a smaller knack?
Actually, yeah, let's make that a level 1 knack, because that is something specific that's kind of outside of the realm of everything. Because we want to like you said, we want to iterate that, and let's call it let's call the number 7. I guess I just like the number 7. So you're gonna have 7 spectra.
Okay.
I guess, and we'll work out what that means, and we'll define some of them in advance and leave the other ones open.
Cool. That sounds good.
Cool.
All right.
And one more.
Okay, so I've done a little bit of preliminary statting, but need to check in with you about several things that are completely ambiguous. So let's start with Theron as Theron, because I think it's pretty straightforward. I just need to talk with you about exactly how things are going to work out in terms of point value. I see Theron in terms of what he can do into himself, right? He is 7 foot tall Catman. He is physically imposing and should be physically imposing, so his stats should reflect that. My intention is that he'll have at least one above 5 physical attribute, possibly more than one of those, depending on how many points I end up having to throw at this. Between skill tricks, there weren't a lot of things where I was like, okay, this is a concrete thing that I wanted to be able to do that is covered well under skill tricks, but there are a bunch of incidental things where I'm like, yeah, it makes sense for me to be able to do that. Like there's a skill trick in agility that's good for, it makes you silent all the time, right? You never make noise unless you want to make noise. That's definitely something he would have. That makes sense for him.
Yeah.
There are all the combat skill tricks, I think, are actually, they're pretty underpowered. They're by design, that's fine. He'll have a few of those because he'll have asset skills that are high enough in those categories, but they don't accomplish a lot in terms of what he should be good at doing. But he's going to be good at killing things. I mean, it's, high enough physical stats, he's just going to be good at that. He has a gun and a sword, and those should definitely be good. Maybe one of, or both of them could be great. If one of them is, it's definitely the sword. And so if it's great, it needs to be an edge, right? There should be some kind of, if it's going to have mechanical benefit, it's going to be statted as an edge.
Generally, if you have a piece of equipment that provides like a real significant mechanical benefit, we should just model it as an edge.
Okay. And so like if the sword is edge worthy, right? That's just a standard edge of 1 to 3. It's not a broad one, right?
Yep, just a standard one.
Okay. So because
if it comes down to it, I always have ways to make sure that you can fight without your weapon. So
yeah, no, I mean he's gonna. So here's some other things, right? He's got this thing going on with where the spots change. I don't really intend for that to have a mechanical benefit. He's just a guy with a high agility. He's got the means to be very stealthy, but it is something that's going on. So if you think that needs to be reflected somehow in the mechanics, you should let me know.
My default on that was that it was basically something that would be relevant for stunt material or dramatic editing, and then unless it's going to do something really impressive beyond that, it doesn't need to be a power.
That's certainly my goal. And I'm taking a few dots of Brawl because he should definitely be able to fight with his bare hands, his bare clawed hands.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, again, if I should reflect that with like an edge to the fact that he could maybe do lethal damage with them. It's not meant to be his primary thing, but it's definitely something I want him to be able to resort to if he gets disarmed.
Yeah, I'd allow it if you wanted to take something that's like, oh, I have claws, so I fight better than normal barehanded, but I definitely wouldn't require it.
Yeah, it's not something, as I said, it's not like the general thing that he's doing, and he's mostly... I'm dumping a lot of points into combat anyway, so...
Right.
I'm
not worried about that.
I think we're on the same page there. Question about the scale policy. What is a narrow scale knack, and what is a scale knack that you then also have to take up to broad? Because he's a perfect example of someone who I think is right on the line between scale 0 and scale 1, just in terms of his physical size. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, like, what is my cost here, I guess is the question.
For a scale knack, basically what I'm thinking is a narrow scale knack would be something where you really kind of like, you're strong in this very specific context, or like, you're really good at like smashing stuff, even though you're not like able to necessarily like lift this huge amount. Or I'm just thinking about strength here, but like, kind of the same principle of other stuff. And then generally, if you're getting a broad scale knack, it just means you have that across anything where the kind of specified area applies. So if you're like, oh, I've got a broad scale knack because I'm big, then any physical role where scale is going to matter, then you can apply that.
Okay, and so based on your cost system, my math suggests that costs 5 points, right? It's like a 1 point edge, plus it's a scale edge, plus it's a broad edge. Just for being big, that would be 5.
Yep.
Okay, well, hopefully I'll be able to free up enough points to do that, because I think it would match the character well. So that's Theron, right? He's like, he's a big, scary cat guy who has some Tarzan-like qualities in terms of his level of survival skills and some, CSI level kind of crime scene problem-solving kind of stuff in terms of like his experience as a sheriff. Okay, so that's Theron. I think it's pretty clear. It doesn't... The mechanics of that are not complicated to me. It's just a matter of how many points I have to throw around at the end of this. The other question is about Emporos, right? It's about the Mekoi that lives inside of him. And that's where all of the kind of flashy stuff comes from. And I wrote about this on the Slack. I see it as having 3 different levels. The first level is there's this intelligence inside his mind that knows things and also wants things and can talk to him, and to some degree can control him, can give him some, like, right now it's just sort of parameters, right? You have to do... You have to fulfill this basic command. The current basic command is just survive. That's pretty easy, but the commands could get more complicated than that. And can also just send him information, and it can mess with him in a whole bunch of different ways. Obviously, that's a storyteller thing. That's not a me thing. It's reflected as one of the contacts in his origin now. It's the contact for his origin. Is there anything more for that level that I should be representing statistically?
There's basically, for that one, I think that there's 2 options. I don't think you have to represent anything. The 2 things that occur to me that you could do is easily kind of a specialty or skill trick that's related to that, if it's something that you plan to leverage a lot. Or alternately, I could easily see taking an edge that gives you a bonus when you're explicitly following Emporos.
Okay, an edge based on following instructions from Emporos. That might make a lot of sense. Yeah, I don't really see it working as a skill trick or a specialty, because it's definitely going to be across a whole bunch of different skills, right? Emporos.
Yeah, so then treating that as an edge is probably
an edge. Okay. Yeah.
And I think that can be narrow because, again, I have an extremely large amount of narrative control over that. So.
Yeah, I don't see it as anything that I'm going to be able to really trigger myself. I can make arguments for why it applies on the basis of things that you've given me, but you have to provide the hook first. So.
And so it gives us something where if you've got you can plan around it in the sense that if you have already gotten a particular instruction, you can potentially leverage it. So if because like you said, your starting one is to survive.
Right.
So there's certainly circumstances where you could be like, oh, I can leverage this benefit as a result of this. But it could always change based on the circumstances. Yeah.
Cool. So that's the first sort of level. The second level is kind of a Swiss Army knife of sensory stuff, of like solving small, simple problems things, right? So basically, the way that I see the Mechoi as manifesting their phenomenal psionic powers is that they generate constructs out of solid light, basically. And so those constructs can do a whole bunch of different things, and what that is variable. I see over time the progression of this character. He's not going to get any stronger or faster, right? He's just a generic Hyleros. So he's as strong and as fast as he's going to be. His progression in terms of power development is getting more control over what Emporos can do. But at the start of play, I don't see him as having a lot of control over that. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just to me, this actually comes off pretty similarly, I think, to what we were talking about for Ralith, which is basically to kind of have this acknowledgement that there's this realm of maybe uncertain like power or ability that's connected to this. Have it available right away as kind of fodder for stunts and dramatic editing. And then when something comes up in play that we think is cool or notable and we want to lock it down, then we just buy it as a power from there.
Okay, so
and that saves us a little bit from having to work out mechanically exactly how all that stuff works, because we can focus our energy on statting out something that we find out like is actually going to be like useful and desirable.
Okay, so what you're saying is that at start of play, this is not something that I need to put on my character sheet. It's a thing.
Yep.
Okay, well that's easy. So the last category, I guess maybe is in this. It's the same thing, but let me know if not. Is that Emporos definitely has the ability to do extremely destructive things, right? I see that my idea is that exactly once, I assume it was in the escape from the ziggurat, Emporos, is the reason why Theron was able to escape, and basically Emporos generated a bunch of horrifying killbots and laid waste to everybody. It's not something that Theron has any control over. It's probably not a level of power that he's ever going to get any control over in the course of our play. And I'm pretty clear for myself, and I think Theron is too, that just because Emporos did it once to save his ass does not necessarily mean that Emporos is going to do it again. I'm trying to avoid using gendered pronouns for Emporos. Definitely Emporos has an interest in not seeing Theron die, but it's not quite a survival interest.
Right.
Emporos has other options, I guess is my point. So there's no guarantee it'll happen again. Is this the same sort of category? Do we want to reflect it somehow mechanically beyond that? What's your...
So given that you said that you don't expect Theron to have any control over that takes out one of the possibilities I was going to say, which is to kind of take it as a low-level power and kind of use that as a basis for sometimes being able to kind of do this. And so then I think there's kind of two possibilities. One is we leave it otherwise unreflected, and it's just kind of one of these things that connects to the path and the background, and it comes up when I want it to come up. And then the alternative, and this is kind of a weird thing that I thought of, but... the alternative could be that you could take something in one of the social skills as a skill trick that's basically I've been talking to Emporos long enough that I think maybe I can convince it to do something if I sweet talk it.
That's a really interesting idea. So a skill trick for talking Emporos into doing something cool with Emporos' ability. I'll think about that. Don't have a lot of relevant... So can you buy skill tricks absent its connection to a skill's connection to your even if it's not an asset skill? Oh, okay, I see that on the chart. All right, well, I might do something like that then. Okay, well that's substantially easier than I thought it would be, and it makes sense to me. Like I said, I see long term some maybe sort of energy manipulation-y kind of powers. For Theron, if we play long enough to develop, the characters significantly mechanically. But at the start of play, it's really it's an area that he does not understand and is has at least an approach avoidance relationship with.
Is it true that we get a specialty
if it's
at
one
3
of your
points?
asset
Yes.
skills.
In your asset skills.
Otherwise, you
It
can
has to be
buy
assets.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All the free stuff is in asset skills.
Okay.
So at 3 points, you get a specialty and a trick.
At 2 points, you get a trick.
And then
At 2 points, you get a trick. At 3 points, you get a specialty. And at 4 points, you get a second trick.
Okay.
And you can pay for any of those for non-asset skills.
Right. And I don't
Gotcha.
think that there's any binding about when you can. Like, you could have a 1 point skill and get a specialty in it, too, I think.
That I
Right?
don't know.
That's how I read it.
Oh, cool.
Oh,
I still don't have enough points.
Yeah, me
Well, I
neither.
just got 4 back. I actually
I'm
can't
actually feeling kind of flush now. I
Oh,
had to
nice.
pay less than I expected for Temporo, so that's good.
And yeah, so like I think the next step from here is going to be kind of everybody going back and fiddling with their character sheets a little bit, and probably the follow up is just going to be individually kind of pinging me about how far you think you were able to kind of get with the points that you had, and based on how that worked out for everybody, we'll work out if what we're talking about is kind of a reasonable amount or not. We'll just kind of look at that, see how it goes.
Cool.
Awesome.
Cool. I think that about covers it in terms of actually kind of going through through the character sheets, unless there's anything else that somebody felt like we didn't cover. And we've gotten some of the concepts of how the crew will kind of relate to each other and everything kind of in place. Some of the ideas of how mechanically people are going to kind of manifest. So for me, that kind of finishes my agenda.
I had a question about, I guess I didn't read the thing on Momentum and Glory, which I probably should read. But I should not think of Glory in the same terms as I think about like Quantum or Essence, correct?
It's in the same category, but it's not quite as significant. It doesn't come up as often, and it's not as much of a limiter on what you can do.
It's not like my powers are like all of my dice pools are based on Glory, right? It's
It's
more
definitely not like that.
Okay.
The number of cases where you wind up rolling it is like really limited.
Okay.
I think I had something that's like 1 per session maybe, but most of the time it doesn't come up.
Yeah, it's going to be most important for dramatic editing, I think, at least for most of us.
Yeah.
And that's
Oh,
important.
that's going to be what powers dramatic. Yeah.
Now, I did have a question about Glory, Josh. In the notes, you have Glory as a limiter on the highest level knack that you can take. Is that, it actually matters here, is that rounding up or down? Because it's half of Glory plus 1.
Which is the good way.
The way that gives you access to the most powers the fastest is if you round up.
Yes, right.
That only applies to Nax?
I think that was right. That's all it says on here.
Don't worry.
But yeah, I figure the biggest reason to invest in Glory is really going to be to make sure that you have a decent pool to do dramatic editing with.
What happened?
Is Braden getting
That's where
murdered?
it's going to be. Well, we can't see the video, so like, who
This
knows?
is not going to hold up in court.
Anything could be happening.
Okay.
Okay, now,
Sounds like you murdered somebody else. Hey.
yeah.
What did I miss?
That's what we were wondering.
It's right.
Ghosts, apparently.
Yeah.
All right, we're just going to leave it. We're going to leave it there. We talked a little bit about maybe using this time for talking about specific relationships between characters. Is that something we want to do?
I'd like to do that if
Yeah,
other
and
folks are
figuring
game.
out where exactly we're starting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right on. So we have at least one really explicit relationship, right, between Molly and Dang.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of thinking, I don't know if Molly found him when she was looking for the Chimera and that's why she hired him on specifically, or if it was more that she just sort of encountered him and he was looking really lousy and was also a very strange species, and so she was kind of like, well, maybe I can fix that. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of how they became a kind of cohorts. What are your thoughts, Braden?
I think Yeah, I think Molly and Dang kind of going back a ways, like maybe when they're both on kind of hard times and sticking together.
Okay.
And like later finding the Chimera, possibly finding Sidra before then. Sidra as sort of a stepping stone to getting the Chimera.
I was reading that as
That's
sort of
possible.
the other way around, as being like the last one in.
Because Sidra has this whole not fitting in, not knowing where she belongs kind of thing going on.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that too.
Alternately, she could have been in a box that we've had for a while, but only opened on the Chimera.
What the hell kind of box have you been carrying around?
I don't know.
Right.
Stasis box. We didn't know what it was either
We said
until
we were
opened
going to
it.
turn into the Firefly skid, right? I mean, that's...
Right, yeah. But yeah, kind of whatever. If you'd rather, it was more of a spontaneous thing when the Chimera showed up. Then I think that works too.
Makes sense to me.
I don't know. I think we had talked about the getting Sidra was maybe our first heist, and now we're set to be big time players.
Now we're set for life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think
We don't need to play anyone.
I think
That's the game, Josh, right? We're just going to hang out and like sip martinis, eat space caviar, right?
Yay!
Oh, definitely.
Wait, does space caviar come from space whales?
I
Obviously.
feel like it must.
Oh.
It's actually just one large ball.
Yeah, it's just like a giant gobstopper. You just take them
No,
out.
I think like a ball the size of like maybe 10 feet tall. You just lick it.
or go at it with an ice cream scoop.
I think space caviar has regular sized caviar orbiting it.
Like little Ayun caviars. Oh boy. Oh boy.
But this would be the time to figure out how criminal
Oh, boy.
the crew is.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is a good question. How criminal does everybody want to be?
As criminal as it's relevant to be at the moment.
That's pretty criminal.
So
Yeah, I mean,
very
like-
criminal.
Well, I mean, so we have Sidra, so it's not like we need to go heisting for cash. But
Yeah, why do we?
But technically,
heist?
almost
Are we
everything
heisting?
Sidra does
Right.
is illegal.
She's
I mean,
still
yeah,
property.
but
Right, so
Unnoticeably
Sidra is a walking
illegal, so
property
whatever.
violation. Theron is specifically exiled from not the most important military power, but at least a rising military power, right? Rayleigh
Yeah.
is
Disbarred.
like a disgraced lawyer at the very most generous interpretation.
Who worked for a group that a very large number of people are
Right,
not happy
and
with.
speaking
so.
of that,
Yeah,
Dang.
yeah. If anybody figured out who I was,
Dang
then
is
yeah.
potentially a
Right.
former war criminal.
I mean, you don't be former with that. War criminal's a permanent status.
Oh, hey, look! This is a superhero universe. Time travel exists. I think it is actually possible to be a former war criminal.
We're gonna go back.
Well,
in-
only
we're gonna go
insofar
back in
as-
time and kill Space Hitler. Think about it.
Yes.
so we're
that
the
the adventure?
jackasses that Dang was trying to stop.
So one of the things I thought might be at least worth looking into is if getting the Chimera is sort of one like Molly's long-term goal that she's just fulfilled, maybe there's something on it or about it that sort of triggers another stage of goal.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Sure.
Some part of space was previously inaccessible without the Chimera.
Or like there's some clues
Sure.
to something to go like look up and dig up to try and sort of put together the origin.
I have at least 3 possible things that could be. And then the question really for me is, do you want that to be something that we establish up front, that we're already all aware of, or do we want that to kind of come up in the early part of play?
I like the idea that because we said we were going to start in media. Is it Ray or Res?
Res. Medias res.
I actually
Yes,
don't
Res.
know.
So we said we were going to do that thing where you start in the middle of the game. and,
Mise en scène.
and I like the idea that we have some sense that we're already on some kind of a quest. Maybe the very early stages of it, like not that we got all fleshed out, but that we're... Because otherwise, I mean, Sidra barely fits in, right? I think that there's a case to be made, like, why are these people still hanging out with each other if they don't have something already that they're doing together?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, I guess arguably, also, if we make the Chimera, like for Rayleigh, it's, the place that he doesn't have to live inside Munin. For Molly, it's this place that she, has been seeking for a long time and really wants to understand and probably never will. So why would she leave? But if there was possibly some element of the Chimera is X to each character in a way that nowhere else is, that could be another reason.
And then the relationship builds from that, right? Like we all have an attachment to the Chimera, and then eventually form an attachment to the other people.
It's definitely the case for Theron, or at least Josh and I talked about this as possibly being the case, that he got a new instruction from Emporos to go to the Chimera.
And that's been my assumption.
So that's it already fits into that slot smoothly.
Yeah, I mean, I think with that on the table, we at least have a plausible baseline angle for that for everybody. Molly obviously was looking for the Chimera,
right?
So that kind of explains that. Dang has a personal relationship with Molly that would suggest that he would stick around initially based on that, if nothing else. Ralith has this kind of benefit technologically from being able to be free of the suit inside the ship. Theron has this kind of instruction, and then Sidra, kind of got found or activated or what have you by you guys after whatever kind of weird, heisty stuff was going on with her previously. So there's certainly some like different character opportunities for like why that could connect everything together. So I think that gives us at least kind of like the surface tension like reason for each person to potentially stick around. Like it gives us a way to say that everybody has some incentive to stick rather than just bounce immediately. So I think I figured out what my hook would be here. So I could just lay it out here.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Want me to?
Okay.
Yeah,
So basically we talked about the engine room a little on the Chimera already. And one thing that didn't come up there, but that I'm going to kind of bring up here, is one of the things that I think you would have noticed. And so, first off, just, this is probably something that came up and that we could build some backstory on later in terms of what exactly happened after this. But basically, one of the things that's going on in the engine room would be that there's kind of this elaborate star chart that's probably kind of like built into the, one of the energy stripes that goes in there that kind of has the galactic map and all of these kind of traceries of the different old bones so that you can kind of see where things connect together. And after you initially, kind of discovered this and started using it to travel around, you would have noticed a place where a connection appeared that didn't exist before and kind of was like glowing in a different color.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Yeah, so there's a secret,
So that's
a
the
new
hook.
pathway.
Okay.
Or an old pathway or something. There's a secret pathway.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Cool.
All right.
For some reason, I get a very Pirates of Dark Water feel from that. I don't
Oh,
know if I
man.
can justify that, but yeah. I also just wanted to say Pirates of Dark Water
Well,
because
I
I didn't
haven't-
get the response from Vin.
Yeah, you sure would.
Yeah, the main reason that I would steer away from that is I don't want to fucking have to define 13 whole treasures
Well,
of
they didn't
rules
either,
because the
if you
chase
remember
down.
correctly.
They never did.
They couldn't be asked to do that themselves, so
I think they got what, half of
like
them?
a little over
And then
half.
sounds
And
series
then,
ended?
if I remember correctly, the last one they found was alive. It had like the first 6 or something were all gems, and the last one was like this green monkey thing.
Right.
And they were just, went too soon. Show ended before its time. Too bad.
Yeah.
I feel like Pirates of Darkwater is one of those things that has the highest ratio of how much it kind of like aesthetically and conceptually influenced people to how little anybody remembers what the fuck actually happened on it.
kind of waiting for like someone to do a remake of that. I would totally watch
Where's
that.
the Kickstarter?
God, I wonder who even like owns the rights for that. Like somebody dug up the Mysterious Cities of Gold and has been like reworking that.
Right, and
lately,
Thundercats
but
got a
nobody's-
redo.
But
Voltron got a
that
redo.
new Voltron.
Yeah, which is
but
really good.
Nobody's done it with Pirates of
I know.
Darkwater. We should start a
real.
letter writing campaign.
You know.
I have too many letter writing campaigns right now.
Oh God, yeah. No, I never want to write a letter.
As soon as we're back to caring about nerd stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep.
Once we fixed America.
Sobertory Pirates of Darkwater
Yeah.
revival movement. Cool. Okay.
All right. So this is normal here where we do a bunch of wrap-up stuff, but I didn't leave that document over, so I'm going to say that we won't bother.
All right.
Yeah.
First time out.
We'll fix it in post. Woo!
Thanks for listening.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you all next week.
Talk to you
or
guys
last
later.
week.
Or if you're glutting the
Yeah, in
things
2
like I tend to
minutes.
do with podcasts in like 20 minutes, yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yep.
See you guys later.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
That was great.
I hope you guys enjoyed this look back into our past. I know I got super nostalgic for all of our old sound issues and recording problems. We'll have a new episode up next week, and then we'll be back on a regular bi-weekly schedule going forward. And again, thanks to all of you for coming on this journey with us. It means a lot to know that people enjoy and appreciate this show. Now, if you want to express that appreciation, you can follow us on Twitter or Facebook at ChimeraPod or on Tumblr at thechimera.space, or you can even do us the greatest of all holiday kindnesses and brave the wilds of iTunes to leave us a rating and a review. It really is one of the best ways to help new people find the show, so every review carries a lot of weight. I think that's all the rambling that I need to do for now. So we'll see you all next week, and thanks for listening.